to call this meeting to order. And this does not work, right?
That's correct.
So I'd like to ask everybody to speak up tonight, for the hearing impaired especially. And I'll try to speak louder too. Please stand for our invocation led by Ron Damian and our pledge of allegiance by Mary Andrews.
Gracious Heavenly Father, we are so thankful for your touch on each and every one of our lives. Father, we are thankful for our staff. We are thankful for our children. We are thankful for our community, our business partners. But most of all, we're thankful for your Son, Jesus Christ. We ask you, Lord, for wisdom, with wisdom understanding, to make good and proper decisions for this district. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Mr. Ron Redden will now conduct our public hearing to discuss the 2012-2013 Texas Academic Performance Report. This is a public hearing, so audience participation is invited at the conclusion of the presentation. Mr. Redden.
Okay, thank you. And I take we don't have a mic, or we do?
That mic does work.
That mic does work, so that's good, because I usually don't need one. I think I'm loud enough as it is. Good evening. In accordance with policy AIB Legal and BISD Strategic Plan Strategies 3.2.1 and 4.2.1, it's my pleasure to conduct a hearing this evening on the 2012-2013 Texas Academic Performance Report. A hearing for public discussion of the annual Texas Academic Performance Report must be held within 90 calendar days, excluding winter holidays, from November 21st, 2013. The Texas Academic Performance Report is a comprehensive look at our district and campuses and includes student performance indicators and performance or information on school and district staff, programs, and demographics. Texas Education Code, Chapter 39, requires each district's Board of Trustees to publish an annual report that includes the TAPR, campus performance objectives, a report of violent and criminal incidents, and information received from the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board. The 2012-2013 Texas Academic Performance Report provides a comprehensive look at the 2012-2013 performance of the Brazosport Independent School District performance indicators listed here. In addition, there are some performance indicators that are dated to 2 years ago and 3 years ago based on college graduates or high school graduates that have gone on to college, and we'll touch on those as we move forward. The performance data is a comprehensive look in the taper and addresses STAR performance, student progress, and the performance of students required to retest under the Student Success Initiative. As has been documented in previous presentations and hearings, BISD has implemented efforts to improve student performance by developing targeted improvement plans at the district level and on each individual campus. The bilingual ESL performance data in the taper is useful because it disaggregates the performance of those students by subject and service delivery model. This year, in response to the academic needs of our bilingual and ESL students, we implemented the Gomez one-way dual language service delivery model. We anticipate improvement in student performance as we phase in this model. Participation, attendance, and rates were at or above the state average this past year. Our graduates improved on the previous year's performance in all but one college-ready indicator and exceeded the state average in nearly every area. In fact, on the as a throw-in on this, the AP testing exceeded the state average by 12.7%, having met 3 or above on the testing. It was outstanding scores for them. Very proud of them. Our district profile contains information profiling our district students, teachers, programs, and budget. You can view that information by clicking on the required postings under the district information tab on our district website, and that's where all of the taper documents will be posted for viewing for the public. One of the Texas Academic Performance Report supporting documents is the Violent and Criminal Incidents Report. This report includes the number, rate and type of incidents that occurred, information concerning school violence prevention and intervention policies and procedures used by the district, along with findings that resulted from the Safe and Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act. Last year, Brazosport ISD reported 148 arrests for incidents involving felony and misdemeanor crimes. This number represents a reduction of 13 such arrests from the previous year. As a district, we've implemented several initiatives and activities to help make our schools safer for our children. These activities represent only a few of the 34 different things we're doing to make our schools friendlier and safer for our kids. Some of those initiatives include DARE, PALS, counseling services, Chicken Club, Red Ribbon Week activities, Crime Stoppers, character counts, and the implementation of the positive behavior intervention support system to help with student management. And again, that's just a few, 34 separate initiatives to make our schools safer for our children. We're very proud of that. Copies of each of the violent and criminal incident report supporting documents, including the detailed data by incident type, may be accessed through our district website. Texas statute requires every district to include with its TAPR a report on student performance in post-secondary institutions during the first year enrolled after graduation. Please note, the data used in this report is tied to the 2010-2011 graduates. The report includes the total number of graduates disaggregated by attendance in institutes of higher education, and then measures the performance of those students using their first year GPA. And again, these reports are available on our website. This concludes the public hearing of the Texas Academic Performance Report. All of the TAPR documents may be accessed through our district website. Select the District Information tab and click on the link to Required Documents. You will also find an expanded version of this presentation that includes all of the data tables used in tonight's presentation. It is the recommendation of administration that the board approve the Texas Academic Performance Report.
So at this time, we'll entertain questions from the audience and the board.
Mr. Davis.
Could you go back to the violent criminal incidents
Yes, sir.
slide?
The violent and criminal incident slide.
No.
Yes, sir.
Curious as to how many of these initiatives were a result of having our own.
You mean the reduction or
No,
the
the
initiative?
PISD initiatives.
Well, I think some of the past initiatives have been part of an ongoing implementation process, Mr. Damon, that began several years ago. And as we've moved along, we've added things. I consider the addition of the police force as one more very positive support in helping us to curtail these incidents.
For DARE, like DARE,
Yes, sir.
was that maybe not so much practiced in the past? Now that we have our own PD, we were able to resurrect that.
I don't know the answer to that, and that would be, Mr. Massey, do you know?
Not there necessarily, but our own police department have created and have implemented some activities with students similar to DARE at different campuses.
They were also highly involved in the Red Ribbon Week activities.
Yes, they were.
And so I think continuing to have their involvement have just basically enhanced some of the programs that were in place, but they have just added additional value to the programs.
So not so much they started or resurrected it, they were enhancing it.
They
Something
are,
already in place.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's such a positive addition to our efforts to curtail these violent incidents. Other questions?
Any further questions?
Well, I went through the TAPR, what do you call it?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Also, I've gone through the ADIS, which was pretty much the same thing, but I'm just looking, all the tests that are done, the grade 3, reading, math, grade 4, on and on and on. You know, there's a lot of data in there, and probably at some point I would like to get with you and get some more info specifically, but one of the things is phase in of
Phase in one,
level
level two, yes, sir.
Is that just the test, the scores?
Yeah, well, yes. What you have is they're working the phase-in process, Mr. Atkins, with the STAR testing. We're going through 2 phases before we get to what they call the final recommendation.
So
This is phase in 1.
It's with the new STAR test?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, that's
Because
exactly
there's a
right.
phase in level 1, level 2, or above, and then level 3 advanced, that's all that kind of stuff. So-
It's all there.
Yeah, I guess one thing that I saw was that the 2013 STAR participation, the district is higher than the state average.
Wasn't that good?
I
That's
thought
great
so.
information.
It's kinda-
99% was outstanding.
It was kind of interesting that it was 2 or 3% higher. I believe.
Yeah,
I remember
it was
right.
excellent.
And the SAT and the ACT results were also higher than the state, so.
68
participation was
points.
lower.
That's right, 68 points on passing when SAT was higher. Well, that,
Unfortunately, the participation is lower, but those who took it did seem to have.
they seem to do very well.
And hopefully we'll discuss it, I'll bring this up a little bit later, but it does show the teacher pay and the level of experience from beginning teachers 1 through 5, 6 through 10, 11 through 20, and greater than 20 years. And we're kind of holding our own on some and behind the others, but on the I guess the average pay, it looks pretty good. There's some areas we can work on, which I hope we can do for the next upcoming budget. We'll talk about that in a little while.
And I think it's important to note that that was post-year data as well.
Right.
So
That's right.
everything with all the data we get like this is all after the fact.
Right.
It's lagging data.
The last thing I have, and of course, since I'm interested in this program, the CTE teachers for us is 2.9%, and the state is 4.1%. So we have some work to do.
Yes.
That's all I have.
Any other questions from the audience? The board? Hearing none, we will close the public hearing then.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Redmond. I'd like to ask the board to begin making your way to the front as we transition to our awards, achievements, and recognitions. And we will now turn it over to Mrs. Carla Crystal.
And you'll notice, obviously, a very different setup this evening. Board members, if you would please stand right here in this alcove area. And then we may ask you to step up a little bit closer to the photographs. Good evening, President Cook, Superintendent Dr. Halachko, board members, and guests. It is indeed my pleasure to always announce awards, achievements, and recognitions for our district, the very best part of the evening. This evening, as always, we have a lot of recognitions from varying groups. Our first one will be our Heartworks. Ms. Mary Lou DeShaney from Human Resources will present. Good evening. It's my honor, with the help of Mr. Damien, to present to you the Heartworks recipient for December, Ms. Christy Cummins. Ms. Cummins is a third-grade teacher at Velasco Elementary School. Ms. Cummins received the Heartwork nomination from her coworker Tony Orbates because she is always positive, has a great sense of humor, and a great rapport with students and staff. Everyone on campus loves being around her because she makes the people around her feel better. Thank you for your contribution to campus and district morale, Christy. Please accept the student for 2 from our 4 BISD Kids partner, El Chicos, and a certificate on behalf of Dr. Alachka and the board for going above and beyond to make BISD a great place to work. Now to announce our next awards, our coordinator of extracurricular programs, Mr. Chris Hutchison.
Brazoria County held its 75th Fair and Rodeo this past October, and BISD art students did what they always do. They did an outstanding job representing their school and our district. The countless hours of hard work and dedication can be seen in each and every submission, from kindergarten all the way to our seniors. BISD artists earn top honors. Here are our talented award-winning artists. Mason Cross, Judge's Choice. Zach Schmolin, Best of Class. Morgan Platt, Best of Class. Emily McGill, Reserve Best of Class. Mackenzie Patero, Reserve Best of Class. Hayden Jaco, Outstanding Award. We would also like to recognize one of our teachers who made this possible, Miss Emily Middleton.
Now, if you will all move forward slightly. All right. Okay. Mr. Cook, will you step this way? On the end over here? More, maybe. More, Mr. Cook. There you go, on the end. All right, Mr. Silvis, would you come over one? Thank you. Yes, Mr. Howard, perfect.
Not move in anymore.
Scooch in like each other. Okay, Mr. Sullivan, would you step over this way, please? Young man, would you step this way, too? That way. Mr. that way a little bit? Mr. Sullivan a little bit? There we go. There we go. All right, thank you very much. And now for our next award presentation is something very special. Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Danny Massey.
Thank you. The 100 Club of Houston was started in 1953 when 100 people each donated $100 with the goal of helping those dependents of Houston police officers who were killed in the line of duty. Through the years, the 100 Club has expanded its coverage to firefighters and providing life-saving equipment to law enforcement agencies, including radios and bulletproof vests. The 100 Club also provides college scholarships for police officers pursuing a degree in criminal justice. Brazosport ISD Police Chief Brian Allen gave a presentation to the 100 Club requesting 6 vehicle police radios and 1 dispatch base station radio. Our request was granted, and we are honored tonight to accept this generous gift from the 100 Club of Houston. A police officer's lifeline is their police radio, and we sincerely thank the 100 Club of Houston for their support of our new police department and the support they have given to families of fallen police officers and firefighters throughout the years. I'd like to ask that BISD Police Chief Brian Allen and representatives of the 100 Club, Mr. Rick Hartley and Ted Lyons, to come to the front and be recognized. Thank you.
All right, we're ready for another picture. Everybody scoot in. Chief? That way a little bit. Perfect. A little closer. There you go. Everybody look this way. And smile. No, really, smile. All right, thank you. So very much. And now to continue with something a little different this evening, we have a very special presenter, someone that can do, gosh, doggone it, almost everything, including evacuating people from a fire situation. Dr. Halachka, would you please join us?
thought she was talking about me.
The Extra Mile Award is given to individuals or groups in our community that demonstrate dedication and service to education in the Brazosport ISD. For the past few years, I've had the pleasure of working with a group of individuals who continuously go the extra mile, serving as advocates, volunteers, and encouragers for education at both local and state levels. The Brazosport Area Retired Teachers, better known as BART, is an organization of educators with an unwavering dedication to ensuring education is a community and statewide focus. They advocate for the protection and improvement of our state retirement system while also serving as volunteers, substitutes, and committee representatives within our district. One even serves on our school board. BART models professionalism and passion and has worked diligently to preserve the rich history of VISD while continuously learning and supporting our current and future goals. It is my honor and privilege to present the VISD Extra Mile Award to the Brazosport Area Retired Teachers.
I think it's the jacket.
This is a group I aspire to join with.
I was the Director of Pupil Personnel Services.
I was Director of Personnel Services.
My young 1 year with Brazosport was as a kindergarten teacher at all.
I had 2 jobs. I was Director of Secondary Education and Athletic Director.
And my first principal. Thank you so much.
All right, everyone this way. Smile. Mr. Atkins, would you do me a favor and move this way? A little more, a little more. And thank you. Smile. Smile. Thank you. But wait, she's not finished yet.
See you tomorrow morning.
Lots to say tonight, I guess. Well, January is National Board Recognition Month, and it is an honor to recognize our trustees for their service to our students, staff, and community of VISD. Martin Luther King Jr. once said that everyone can be great because everyone can serve. Each of you are truly great because you have been willing to go above and beyond for VISD through your service on this board. You continuously give to our district by cheering on students at events and programs, by serving on committees, by advocating for our needs with the state, and by supporting our mission to develop and empower the whole child with the capacity to excel in an ever-changing world. And for this, we say thank you. To express appreciation for your dedication, our campuses have created some wonderful baskets filled with spirit items and treats for you to enjoy. We want you to each know how much we appreciate you and applaud your service. Thank you very much.
We thank you guys. We appreciate this very much. It's an honor to serve our community and all the educators in the ISC. So we're honored to be part of this. So thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy your basket.
We actually have the easy job.
And this does conclude our awards, recognitions, and achievements. And board members, you may be seated. And again, I wish to remind you, the best part of the night.
Thank you, Mrs. Kristen. Appreciate it very much. At this time, in accordance with local policy BED, the board will provide an audience for individuals who have signed up prior to the meeting to address the board. However, tonight we do not have any requests to comment from the board, so we'll move on to the next item on our agenda. And the next item is executive session. And executive session may be called for the purpose permitted by the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code, Section 551001 through 551146. Section 551071, consultation with attorney. 551074, personal matters including appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment of duties, discipline, dismissal, and complaint. We will return shortly. And thanks again for these baskets. Appreciate it very much. The board has ended executive session. We will now reconvene in open session at 7:56 p.m. I will turn it over to Dr. Loshka this time for our consent agenda highlights.
Thank you. This evening we have a few action items in our consent agenda, and I'd like to quickly highlight some of these for the board and our audience. There are also additional details about each item in the board book. Under sale of delinquent tax property, there are 3 properties listed, with 2 being in Jones Creek and 1 in Oyster Creek. We do not own these properties, but do receive a portion of the profit when they are sold after being delinquent. Our proceeds are minimal, but approval is required. In purchases exceeding $25,000, you'll find general operating purchases such as copy paper and groceries. However, I do want to highlight our continuation of procurements for the installation of security cameras and classroom projectors. These are both steps towards meeting our goal of creating safe, secure, and innovative learning environments for our students. We're also recommending approval of 6 class size waivers for elementary classrooms that have exceeded the 22-to-1 ratio. These classrooms are either at 23 or 24 students. However, it's important to note that although it appears we are adding waivers, the reality is that 11 of the waivers approved in October are no longer necessary, since those individual classrooms have dropped to either 22-to-1 or in some cases even lower. We are continuing to seek the financial means to lower class sizes throughout the district and hopefully address classroom sizes more in the future. Finally, there is an addendum included on the employee recommendations due to some second semester hires and for reasons discussed in executive session. And with that, this concludes my summary of the consent agenda, and I will turn the meeting back over to President Cook at this time.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to pull any items for the consent agenda for discussion? Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda? So moved. Is there a second? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay. The consent agenda passes. Next, our first action item is the principal of O'Hara Lanier Middle School.
Good evening. After an extensive interview process, collecting community feedback surveys, and meeting directly with the Lanier Middle School staff to collect their desired characteristics of their next principal, I would like to present the principal position recommendation for R. O'Hara Lanier Middle School. In accordance with Board Policy DC Local, it is my pleasure to give you a recommendation for the principal of R. O'Hara Lanier. The administration recommends Shannon Hester for the employment of principal of Lanier Middle School.
Is there a motion to approve Mrs. Hester?
I motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Hearing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed by nay. Successor by unanimous decision. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. Our next agenda item is the financial audit for the year ending 2013.
Thank you. This is what everyone's been waiting for. According to board policy CFC legal related to annual financial audits, we're happy that another year has successfully been completed. We do have a representative, Wade Whitlow, former BISD grad, here to present the results of the audit. He works for our local accounting firm, Kenner Masters in Lunsford. He's here to present the results. Turn it over to Wade.
Good evening, I'm Wade Whitlow, class of 2003 from Brazosport. Back in those days, Coach Massey was putting me into shape on the football field. To start off, just kind of talking about the audit. Everything went according to plan. Dan, Rebecca, and everyone in the business office was very professional. They had everything that we requested from an audit standpoint, and they helped us coordinate with the other departments within the district that we needed to visit to perform various tasks within our financial statement and our compliance audit. So just to go through the report, to highlight a few things, on page 11, if you're looking at the audit report, or page 94 in the board book, you'll see at the top it'll say independent auditors report.
So if you're in board book and downloaded it, it's the second number you mentioned. If you pulled it up in quick view and you just open up that individual document, then it's the first page number he indicated. So everyone clear?
No.
Are you you're in board book? Yes. Open up the whole thing. What page?
94?
94 in board book.
Page 94.
95 this time.
Okay. This is our opinion letter for the school district. It looks a little bit different than it has in the past, and it's a little bit longer due to some new auditing standards that were implemented in the current year. On the first page, the biggest thing that the standard board is trying to drive home is a division of responsibility between what are management's responsibilities and what are the auditor's responsibilities. So the first page goes through that. On the next page, page 96, at the top you'll see the opinion paragraph, and what this opinion paragraph states is that what the reader is about to read is factually correct. It's what's now referred to as an unmodified opinion, used to be called an unqualified opinion. It's the best opinion you can receive. It's a clean opinion. And, the rest of the letter that goes through there places emphasis, or what we placed emphasis on, and what we're placing our opinion on. If you go to page 116 and 117 in board book 32 and 33 in the audit report, you'll see the governmental fund balance sheet on page 117. You'll see the different categories of fund balance, and total fund balance in the general fund, roughly $29.5 million. That is at a level that the state deems adequate, the optimum fund balance for the school district. I know in the past 5 years, there's been some decisions made to help, some tough decisions made to help get that fund balance to a figure that is at the optimum level, and the $29.5 million for this year is at the optimum level for the school district. Next schedule I'll refer you to on page 166 or page 82 in the audit report. This is the general fund budget to actual. We took the original budgeted amounts and then the final budgeted amounts with all the budget amendments to get the budget to actual, and every function in the expenditures has a positive variance. And then the last thing I'll go over is on page 193. It's another. This is the second of the 3 letters within our report. It's a report on internal control over financial reporting. This letter is a required communication. In the letter, it states that there are no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal control. So it's a clean letter. The next letter on page 195, this is our independent auditor's report on compliance for major federal programs. It looks very similar to the financial statement opinion letter. This is also a clean opinion for the major programs that we had tested this year. We found no instances of, there weren't any significant deficiencies or material weaknesses within the major programs from a compliance standpoint either. So with that being said, that's all I have for y'all. We thank y'all for the opportunity to serve as the district's auditors, and I'll open it up for any questions.
Any questions?
Well, since Tom's here, he wants me to ask a question, I'm sure.
No, it'd be old times.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. No, I just discovered some things in here, and it's kind of interesting because the total cost is 112 million, 112.7 million. Taxpayers, 71%. I thought that was interesting. Not so much the audit, but I had never seen that accumulated like that before. So
You got voted out too soon.
I know. 2012 state revenues, 15.6%. 2013, 12.4. Another indication.
Yeah.
71% may go up. So tax collection, 99.16. So that's in good shape. So, and I assume that the again, like Wade said, by the way, Blue League too. We counted no significant difficulties. So that's good for Dan and the staff and the crew and for the school district. So I would assume that this report is pretty much what it's been for the last 2 or 3 years, I think. Having looked at a bunch of these over the years, I'm pleased with this. It captures everything, and assume the one school with the special ed files, we've been working on that, got that solved. So other than that, it looks good from my perspective. So I'm happy.
On the federal programs, this is with all the documentation that's required to ensure that money is being spent appropriately. Does this opinion letter go along with that when you ever report to the state?
The opinion letter along, well, sorry, if you want to take that question. I don't want to speak on your behalf. It's their opinions on our financials, so.
Based on our testing on the major programs, on the compliance test that we did and performed, we take a risk-based approach, audit approach, and based on the risk that we assess within the district, coupled with the testing that we perform associated with those risks, caused us to, or led us to a clean opinion from a compliance standpoint on federal programs.
What they do is they take a sample. An audit doesn't include 100% verification of every transaction in the district. What they take is a representative sample of the transactions. If there's no findings or errors on those, then they apply that sample to the rest of the transactions and provide that clean opinion. If there is an error in one, then they have to continue to look, provide additional transactions or sample additional transactions to then to gain a higher comfort level to determine was that an isolated problem or was that a recurring issue throughout other transactions. And so in their testing, I believe they did not have any errors that would require additional sampling, so it was deemed compliant with those tests.
Basically, just to reiterate what he said, is we test both payroll transactions, cash disbursements, and bidding process.
process to a low level of control risk. So we have to have a larger population tested to get that low level of control risk. And in this case, we could find, maybe we find one or something like that, depending on what it is. It might be a deficiency, but it might not arise to a significant deficiency. But in this case, we had no findings. But as far as the compliance part of it, there are 14 guidelines for areas that you have to test under the compliance under OMB. And they start with allowability, cost, Ms. Pete, the right circular, reporting, eligibility, subrecipient monitoring, purchasing, whether or not you check the internet to make sure somebody who did a bid was not suspended of the bar, and all that. It encompasses a lot of test work to be able to render an unmodified bid.
The driver for all this question, my questions were, I appreciate the work involved in making sure that we have all the documentation, because the campuses that we have need to have a lot of funds. But I would almost think that's a lot of work. I appreciate it.
I think
These folks can't find anything.
I think most people find it very painful to use federal funds to buy anything because of the amount of documentation that is involved. Some districts, like years past, wouldn't even take federal funds because of just an administration nightmare of trying to document each of those costs. So we're unfortunately not in that situation where we can just reject $2 million. So we're going to take it. We're going to do what we have to in order to make sure we're in compliance. And I think this is a group effort. I'd love to take all the credit, but most of it is handled at the various department levels. We ensure that we have the adequate controls in place to make sure the documentation is there, appropriate approvals, and we work hand to hand with the federal programs department, special ed, career technology, Kate, and so all those federal programs to ensure that what we say we're going to spend it on from a program standpoint is what we ultimately do spend it on. So,
Okay. Kudos to your staff and to the camp and to the district staff, making sure that we are in the corner.
I just have a request. I was going to download it, but I see you've got it neatly bound and everything. Do you have an extra copy or something?
We can get you one if they.
Yeah, we have some extra bound copies if you'd like, and we try to upload it in board books so you have it available at over the weekend for your reading enjoyment. But we do also have bound copies if you would like one. Any other requests for a bound copy? One. Any other questions? It was really good reading, I'll be honest with you. Is there a motion to approve the audit?
I make a motion to approve the audit.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by nay? Motion carries. Some football story about Coach Massey sometime? Not now, maybe later. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. So you're saying he was that size?
He was that size.
Wow. That would be intimidating. So our next item is architectural services. Most people are jealous that they were the second item on action. Sorry. The following is in accordance with Section C8 of the Board of Trustees policies, along with aligning with Sections 4.1 and 4.2 of the strategic plan regarding facility improvements. The selection of an architect is an important decision for the district. A great deal of effort has taken place over the last month to ensure that the architect that best meets the district needs is selected. The following is the timetable that we put together just to summarize the efforts that took place in a short period of time. Clearly want to emphasize the importance of the architect selection. As you can see, the board approved, this all started last month, the long-range facility plan was approved by the board We immediately began establishing the 10-member architect selection committee. Legal advertisements and the facts occurred on December 13th and the 16th. Our request for qualifications was sent out to 19 firms. They were due back on the 6th of January. We summarized the responses along with had an architect selection committee of those 10 members to review qualifications and select 4 firms to interview. In addition to that meeting, we established the 14 criteria items we were going to rate the architects over the interviews. Those architects that were selected had 2 days to get information together to present to the committee. So the interview took place on January 10th, and now we're here tonight, January 14th for the recommendation. I would like to have a special thanks to our committee. It was made up of board members, citizens, along with the maintenance and administration staff, as you can see. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Jim Martin, one of our committee representatives, who also serves on our Citizens Finance Committee, heavily involved with the district. I appreciate his time, all along volunteer, took off a day of work. I did take off a day of work to come to the interviews on Friday. I'll turn it over to him for the outcome of the interviews along with the recommendation.
2003, that's nothing. We're the greatest class alive. We're the class of 7'5". You can't touch us, can't touch us. You know, we were here Friday for about 6 or 7 hours, and it seemed like a long time until tonight. Tonight seemed like a lot longer, I'll be honest with you. But Friday at the 4 farms, we got together, and I want to say that the district was very, very blessed. All 9 farms were outstanding farms. The 4 that we interviewed at length were, all 4 of them could do a fantastic job for BISD. They on time, they were punctual, they were prepared, and like Dan said, they only had like 2 days to get prepared, so it was pretty impressive. So they had 35 minutes to make their presentation, then we gave them 10 minutes for question and answering. Then we graded them on the 1 to 5 scale, so 70 was the most any one person could get, so 630 is the most any one company could have scored. As you can see here, the scores were tight. I mean, low was 517 and the high was 534. But based on the outcome of the interviews, we are prepared to come to the board and make the recommendation that you hire Corrigan, the highest ranking person on the list. So it's recommended that the Board of Trustees contract with Corrigan to serve as the district's architect in connection with the development of a district-wide master facilities plan and for other associated architectural services. If you've got any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Most of you, or a lot of you, were actually there too and participated, so shouldn't be a whole lot of questions. But I'd be glad to answer. I've been here all day, and I'm excited about the fact we got the mic working. I was really sad that that wasn't working. I was going to have to shout.
That's maybe the minority.
Yeah, probably so. I probably don't even need the microphone.
I just have a quick question. What is the cost figure involved?
At this point in time, we are just, there's no fees or structures at this time. At this time, we're trying to see who's the most qualified firm to then take the job.
State law actually prohibits the use of the fee as a deciding factor. It's strictly based on qualifications, and I believe what the state was trying to avoid was having to go with the lowest cost might not be the highest quality of, and typically in these agreements, the range in the industry is 6% with some negotiation depending on how large of a project it is. And then what we're looking at, and what we've seen in the past, we're going to have discussions with them, is that for the master facility plan, there's going to be a lot of time involved with the architect, and so there's going to be a fee associated with that. If the board does decide to move forward with a future bond and the projects actually come around and we're happy with the services that they've provided to date, then we'll engage them to be the architect and they'll roll that cost of that master facility plan into their 6% or whatever we decide on fee. But that, once the board actually approves based on qualifications, then we can then begin the negotiation process.
Thank you.
Sure.
So we couldn't ask that question.
We tried.
We tried, we couldn't.
Have you ever used them before?
We've used them a little bit on our 2000, our current bond, 2012 bond. We're just now getting into the actual using them because we haven't really had any facility modifications needed. But what we have used them on, utilized their free expertise so far on some of the design and selections for color schemes and various patterns for what we're going to do for our carpet and tile rotation and paint scheme, so we can have a consistent theme throughout the district. And so we've utilized them for that. We've yet to see a bill, so we thank you for that efforts so far. But until we get into actual facility modifications, then typically we haven't seen. That's when we'll actually have more use of their services.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to point out, the first thing that we really need to get started with is the demographics. We need much more in-depth demography of what's coming, or where it is, and moving, and et cetera, et cetera. So that'll be, if we take this architect, that's one of the things that Dan will probably work with them with. We committee all agreed with that. I mean, that's something maybe we should have had, but hey, we'll have it now, so we'll have to keep it up. So I think it's very important.
Just kind of to add to that, I mean, there's options. Either we could hire a demographer individually or have them as a sub to the main architect. And I think we were okay with them being a sub, but once we do get the report, it is something we as a board and as a district will need to keep evergreen over the life of the master plan. So this is a good first start.
And I have discussed with Corrigan a little bit about, they do have Representative John Askew here, how could we arrange that, and they could actually provide the service through Corrigan and basically just pass through the billing to us. So, kind of gives us one less point of contact. We get to select who, but we could actually have it run through them. Just one less bill we have to get a separate check for, but and so that would be beneficial moving forward in order to expedite the timing of it.
Also, like to thank Jim and Mike Andrews here, Jim Martin.
Another Peewee graduate back here.
94.
His blood sugar is not as low as mine right now. So.
Regarding demographics, demography study, again, it's just my opinion. It doesn't mean anything other than it's just my opinion. We have demographics that make where we have socioeconomic change migrating towards the Brazosport feeder pattern. Is that something like that involved when someone does a demographic study? It's not just this is the number of people, this is how many people we think. It's actually that type of socioeconomic
makeup.
Thank you.
They'll get demographics from all different entities, from the school, from industry, from the state of Texas. I mean, they'll definitely hit areas that we haven't touched ever.
Very
And they're trying to project as well what projects that are coming and anticipated growth there, what housing developments are going up, and which is why it prompts a conversation with all those various entities and organizations in order to come up with the best estimate for population in order to help us identify where the need may be. It's not just next year, but down the road is what we're really, because it's not going to happen overnight. I wish we could do that and hey, we have new campuses or decide where we need them, but unless we have that information, it's going to be difficult to really pinpoint the best possible solution for the district so that we can design our areas in a manner that we can operate in an efficient manner that also meets all the district community needs.
And help assist the teachers when they're designing their classrooms.
Oh, yeah.
The best
right.
tool to be able to teach.
Yeah, one of our questions, criteria items was innovation, and that is not only safety, technology, design, and so educational, operational. And so those were some of the things that, from a criteria standpoint, we were evaluating the architects, so that, I mean, we can have, and like as we've said, any of them probably could have done a great job for us. We were very blessed with the selection pool, and really, I think making a bad decision was almost impossible. It was just which one best meet our needs, and which one brought to the table those innovative designs, the expertise in the various areas, the pictures to show the experience, and then the references to follow up with those long-term relationships with clients and how they're happy with what was built, and it's meeting their needs. And so that's where it was important for us to make sure we get that level of service moving forward.
I think each step of the process will be very comprehensive. I mean, even how parents will get in and out, dropping their kids off and picking them up, how the kids will get back and forth to the lunchroom. I mean, we'll have a good plan.
I really like the bullet, the last bullet, sub-bullet. Clients are not on the education place. It's going to allow for it to do so. I think that aligns with what we're hearing from our business partners.
Yeah, 30% of their business is education.
Education. Corrigan was one of the few that wasn't, predominantly education. And this group down here in Houston that we're dealing with do predominantly do education, but they're a worldwide company, so thusly education is not a big chunk of theirs. But it gives them the ability to mix in industry standards and what the office buildings of the future look like into the classrooms of today. So,
they have first-hand experience with resources within their organization versus having to go to an outside organization, what do they want. And so that was one of the things that helped sway the decision, I believe, on at least my opinion.
Yeah, it kind of lost me a little bit when they said that they weren't educational, and they realized then the people who are going to work on it are full-time. Yeah. So that was a good last point to make.
It's really nice that our schools don't look like a PBK school. All the schools in Texas look like PBK. It's nice to have something different.
well, and that's one of the reasons I think that we like Corrigan is looking through their displays. It wasn't that you saw Corrigan schools, you saw independent school district schools that matched what was that town's feeling and brick and everything else. So we think that they're your best choice.
Let's build on that question. I think you mentioned consistent theme. We're not going to lose consistent theme based upon that area, not Freeport won't look like, or won't be required to look like the Brazosport field. Brazosport field pattern won't be required to look like the Brazosport field pattern, and vice versa.
Themes will be asking.
It's with what we've heard is that the design type, or actually the development committee is a pretty big committee, 30 plus, and so it's going to have representation. And then once we get to the point of design, some of the internal workings may be consistent, but what it looks like on the outside, that's the facade, and there's modifications that can be made there. Clearly, we want to make sure that it meets the needs, but we want to make sure we can get the minimum in there for each of the campuses. But from a look standpoint, that stuff is going to be flexible when it comes to the preference of the campus.
So I can take away, that's what I think I heard, is the theme is not only the outside, but what the inside is going to provide for our students for their need at that particular campus.
What I think will happen is you'll set up criteria that we want to have at each of the campuses, and how you fit that into the campuses will be obviously figured in the design. So there'll be minimums, and then what it looks like and set up. Obviously, we'll want to have consistent traffic flow. We want to have all the things that will make our community's life good. But if you're worried about taking away from the individuality of the areas, that's not part. I mean, we're going to have that customization there on the facade. That's what we did that's what we're looking forward to moving into this, is having those opportunities and having those conversations with the various areas.
I think in working with Corgan, if we as a district decide we want them to all look the same, they'll all look the same. If we as a district want all of them to look different, they'll all look different.
Much better articulated.
Sorry.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Brandon.
Any other questions? Is there a motion to accept the contract with Corrigan Optical Services? Is there a second? Any discussion, further discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay? Passes unanimously. Thanks to class of 75 and 94, we appreciate it.
We appreciate serving on your 30-member committee as well. Thank y'all.
Thank you very much.
Great job.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
But we're leaving now.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
So that committee must have gone well. I'm getting a repeat request, so that's good. Sometimes I'm fearful that we might scare folks off after a committee.
Mr. Shaver, would you like to introduce John from Corrigan,
Oh, yeah.
so that they can put a face with a name? So
John Corrigan, no,
John
Askew.
with
Sorry.
Corrigan.
No credit, sorry. John Askew, he'll be our project manager for our facilities, along with Eric Askew. He's not here this evening.
Eric Horseman.
Horseman, sorry. All right.
Too many H's and names.
Okay, how late is it?
Late.
Okay. So anyway, we do appreciate him coming, put a name with a face. We'll be seeing a lot of him over the next several months in this long-range facility plan. So
Thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay.
The Bond Oversight Committee update?
Yes, believe it or not, we've actually combined two items. During our last Citizens Bond Oversight Committee meeting, action item took place that also required board action. So while providing the update, we're also going to have the recommendation of the committee, which is in alignment with board policy CVD, along with our strategic plan 3.2.1 regarding communication of critical funding issues. We've had a really strong attendance at the last meeting, 13
classifying jobs based on the job descriptions or where these jobs fall into pay grades. It's more with financial. It doesn't really, actually doesn't do anything to address a 2-week versus a 1-month pay cycle.
Let me see if I can summarize what I understand. A full audit includes all of the employees of the district.
Yes,
I mean, bus drivers, janitors?
yes.
Okay. And an annual audit would be the teachers, administration?
No, it includes all of that. We submit all employee pay files to TASB. They do more of a sampling of those structures as opposed to evaluating every individual person within the district.
By structure, you mean?
Like, say for example, they will take bus drivers and they will look at years of experience and how they fit into the current pay grade.
So what are they under maintenance, or what is the division that we have bus drivers under, or the department, I should say?
Under transportation. They're under transportation.
So they will look at transportation and so forth?
Yes. Yes.
You've answered my question, thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I want to be clear. So maintenance is a sampling, because they would take a sampling of transportation.
Yes.
Versus a full audit would be all the.
And they made recommendations for our pay files for pay for this year, so they have all that data. They know, for the most part, what we're doing. They're taking our existing pay files to make sure they're gonna look at, okay, did we make the adjustments as they projected for last year? If we did, they know what we're doing already. They're gonna run comparisons with those, with other data that they have from other districts throughout the state and our area. And last year, I believe we selected, it was either 11 or 14 neighboring districts for them to run comparisons. So they'll take an updated pay file data from other districts and run ours in comparison to see, did we do a market adjustment last year that's appropriate for the trend that's out there? And then they'll make recommendations in those areas. Because it'll change.
From my perspective, what Jay's saying is that, you know, they've got all the data, and, you know, we can just kind of look at it and see, because they're gonna look overall, and, you know, they're gonna see if there's any big gaps. You know, there shouldn't be, you know, but it also does compare to the if people did come in after us, you know, based on our survey, you know, and do some adjustments, then that's captured. You know, and so we don't have to do the whole big thing, but it's, again, to me, it's something that, you know, I will fight for every year to have either the maintenance or the whole study done, because that's the only way we're gonna stay competitive.
Yeah, so I guess to summarize it, it checks to see if the changes we made put us ahead or behind of other districts and the changes they.
Correct. Absolutely.
But two points are very critical. One is the annual money they have for the budget, and the other is the enrollment of people that they have, I mean, students, or I should say, and the employees that they have. So pretty critical matter, right?
Yes.
I move to approve.
Anyone ready to make that motion?
Yeah, I move to approve.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second.
Time for discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay? And it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is the update 98 affecting local policies. Oh, good. Awesome.
This one's long, so get ready. In alignment with Board Policy BF Local and Strategy 3.1 of the Strategic Plan regarding operational efficiencies, I'm pleased to present to you this evening Policy Update 98 and other local policies. Update 98 is a post-legislative update and includes 11 local policy revisions recommended by TASB for board consideration. We will be going through each of the update policies with a brief overview, and at the end of each category, we will stop to answer any questions. We will begin with policy BBE. BBE Local is the first revised policy written to align with HB 628, which adds limitations on individual board member access to information beyond student records and requires a district to track the request of board members and report those beyond 200 pages and in a 90-day period. Next is DBA Local, noting that employees' social security numbers will not be used as an employee identifier and will remain confidential. DFFA is another local revision recommended to align with legislative changes, which requires that appraisals for more than 1 year, if available, will be considered when making reductions due to financial exigency. DFFB is just like the change in DFFA related to making personnel reduction decisions due to program changes. DGBA Local was revised to allow for an employee's representative to participate via telephone during a grievance if our district allows by policy for employee representatives, which we currently do. DH, next is local policy DH, was revised to add as an employee standard of conduct to comply with the legal requirement of reporting child abuse and neglect, and a cross-reference was added to policy FFG, which addresses this requirement. Next, substantial changes were made to DNA Local due to HB 2012, which requires more frequent classroom observations and walkthroughs to ensure teachers are receiving appropriate guidance, and addresses review of consecutive appraisals when making employment decisions. Other changes were made that the board previously approved as a part of the summer update, but TASB delayed making the changes until now to save on cost of revision. HB 5 required the board adopt and enforce limiting loss of class time for remedial tutoring or test prep to no more than 10% of days. EC Local was revised to note this new requirement. EIA is another policy that was revised and approved by the board previously, but changes were delayed again since legislative revisions were also needed, which includes the removal of the requirement that end-of-course exams count as part of a student's final grade. The compulsory attendance policy, FEA Local, received a number of revisions, adding new provisions and allowances for excused absences, along with the requirement that truancy prevention measures be implemented prior to filing with a court, and a court can dismiss if these measures are not documented. And then the final TASB policy revision is FEC Local, which was revised to align with FEA, just discussed, and the revisions approved by the board this summer. Before we move forward, are there any questions on these 11 Update 98 policies specifically? There are more policies, but those are the ones associated with Update 98. Okay.
The only comment I had is on DBA about social security number, that these items that's probably E1A, the end of
EIA.
the end of class or the end of course grade is not counted in the final grade.
Correct.
And added as this is a mistake. I want to make sure that that's understood, and that's it.
That's correct. Next, we have two policies we are required to annually review and revise as needed. The district investment policy, CDA, stresses the significance of safety and preservation of principal sufficient liquidity, that's a large finance word for me, to meet anticipated cash flow requirements and a competitive rate of return, as well as the need to maintain portfolio diversification. BISD's investment continues to consist of financial instruments that provide safety of principal and high liquidity, that's, I can say exigency, but I can't say that one, and diversification. The district's investment policies and strategies address the maturity of our investments and stress the need to invest in instruments in which the maturity coincides with anticipated spending needs. This minimizes the risk and ensures that we do not invest for speculative purposes. No changes are suggested in the investment strategies at this time. We should continue to stress investment suitability, including safety, liquidity, and yield, as well as portfolio diversification and the need to match investment maturities of availability with anticipated spending needs. The Public Funds Investment Act requires that the board to review the list of those investment brokers whom we are authorized to engage in investment transactions, and as well as review CDA on a yearly basis. Brazosport ISD's authorized investments include the Lone Star Investment Pool, also known as First Public, and Coastal Securities. Due to the growth in funds, the need to diversify over additional pools is being reviewed. If needed, administration will request authorization at a later meeting to add investment pool options. Are there any questions regarding our investment policy or investment brokers? Okay.
I'm sorry. Update 98. Did I miss the comments portion?
Yes, but we can go back. Which policy would you like to take a look at?
BBB load.
BDE?
I'm sorry.
BDE?
The phrase. Acting in his or her official capacity. Is there a definition of official capacity somewhere? Missed?
Let's see if I can quickly find that for you. Yes, there is a definition. Let me see if there's. It is, it's really acting in their legal capacity related to their role in governance. It is focused on, I can find the exact wording related to that for you. I do believe it may be in legal, but it is consistent. It is regarding the, you can go back to the defined roles of the board members. That is actually in a different policy, but you can go back and those would be the those legal capacity, the official capacity.
I didn't do a thorough search.
Yeah. And
I just wanted the definitions.
any additional?
That was all I had.
That's okay. Anytime. Let's see. I have the list here for you. Official capacity is fiscal affairs, business transactions, governance, personnel matters, student matters.
And that's actually in BB law. Thank you.
I knew I'd find it. It just took me a second. Any other questions on our investment policies or on Update 98? Okay, we'll move forward. Earlier this year, we held our annual policy review, and as stated at that time, further action from the board could be required pending TASB's review of the revisions. We have 4 policies TASB has recommended further revision on. We'll start with BQB. Local, we made revisions to change the requirement of 2 business and community representatives on the DEIC to 1 representative each, since we have had difficulty finding participants. Although the law does not specifically state a number, it does use plural language indicating more than 1 is required. Therefore, we change this policy back to 2 business and 2 community representatives. DFBA regarding employee termination was another local policy we revised, and TASB recommended further revision of removing the list of specific reasons for good cause. In consultation with our attorney, we recommend rejecting TASB's recommendation and leave the list in policy. The list does not limit us in any way, and we believe better defines conditions of good cause. In FDA local, academic performance was listed as a criteria for accepting transfers, and TASB recommended either removal of this criteria or a statement of special consideration for students with a disability. We are recommending the removal of the academic performance as a criteria. And finally, at GKD local regarding facility usage, TASB recommended removal or revision of the paragraph regarding use of facilities by religious groups. We have selected to revise the language to note limitations on any group who uses one of our facilities for an extended period of time, and not only religious groups, as it could be misread as meaning something different. Are there any questions on these 4 TASB recommended revisions from our annual policy review?
So GKD would talk public business by non-school related. We have a lot of uses. Currently, I know there used to be a lot.
Currently, any churches, I do not believe we have any churches currently using those. We do have. Club teams will use our facilities, sports teams, Boys Girls Club.
Boy Scouts,
Any other questions on this? Okay, next we have 1 policy revision that's being recommended based on our curriculum audit findings. And this is policy, local policy CE. We're recommending to ensure our operating budget is aligned with our curricular and instructional priorities. And so we're just making a brief change in language to align with our curriculum audit. Are there any questions on this?
On the CE, we're adding is it the red underline?
Yes.
What was that section again, I'm sorry?
CE.
CE local?
Yes, sir. Okay. Finally, we have, okay, mine's in a different view, so. Finally, we have 2 new policies we would like to recommend adding that are in alignment with other districts as well as best practice. CDC is the first policy. We would add this requiring superintendent and board approval for donations or gifts. This protects the district from the risk of a gift or donation being accepted that would require ongoing maintenance or future funding the district would be unable to support.
Some questions about that one. Principals can approve for less than $2,000, and then the next statement, it basically says that the gift is not to a school, it's to the district, and then the district can do with that gift as they determine appropriate for the district. I guess somewhat philosophically, everything belongs to the district. I don't know, does that pertain to PTOs? Because PTOs are usually strictly for the school, they raise money for that school, and I think there would be a lot of heartburn if a PTO raised money, bought a gift for that school, and then the district came in and took that gift and gave it to another school. I don't know if we need to clean up that language so that it's not construed or that there's some criteria of what becomes district over an individual school. But I know if a parent donates something to that school, they would be peeved if that got taken away from that school and given to some other school. So I guess I have heartburn with the way it's currently worded. I don't know if we need to look at revising it or if we need to put clarifications in there, because to me, if we're allowing the principal to sign for it, that principal in that school should keep it.
Well, it's come up in the past, actually, and if it was a check, for example, whoever was made out to, whoever the gift was given to, kept possession of it. I think it was a big controversy at times. For us, we got $200,000 from legal fund money, and so we wanted to go all over the district, but it was made specific to Brazosport.
And in that case, there may be criteria on the definition of the gift. So if it's going to go to a school, it needs to be below a certain value. If it's above a certain value, then it goes to the district based on level of approval. And I don't know what the right wording should be, but just the way it's currently worded, I could see it opening the controversy.
And
Dan may want to speak to this further, but I think really the purpose of the statement, this is a TASB policy. So this is a standard TASB policy, and so it is their language. I think really the purpose behind this is to state that should there be a need for really the disposal of something that has been torn down, that's fallen apart, the district has the authority and option to do that, even though it may have been a donation that was provided to a school by a specific person that it means a lot to them, but it's become a hazard or something to the campus. And so I think it's really not to take away common sense and good practice, and but to really just put a protection clause into place. And it is, if that's a specific concern, then further regulations could be developed, you know, to really specify how that process works.
I think, you know, if something's donated to the school, then the school owns it, and the school and the district can manage it accordingly. If the school doesn't need it, they want to donate it to the district, I think that's okay. But, so I don't know what the right wording needs to be.
I think it's a good thing. For us, for example, someone drove up an 18-wheeler and gave it to us. And it was a nice gift, but the maintenance on it was very expensive. And eventually the tractor was unmaintainable and the trailer pretty close. So I think it's kind of to protect us. If we have to get rid of something, we can get rid of it if it becomes too costly for us.
Yeah, and that I mean, that's one of those gifts that maybe we don't accept it. And there's criteria in there for not accepting a gift, and I think that's valid. So I think it's just, you know, if the gift is valid and is accepted, and if it's given to that school, then that school should be allowed to keep it.
That'll probably always be there.
And that is the intent. What we've seen is whenever we have maybe a district initiative that follows a gift that was provided, let's say for a projector type of situation where maybe there's a gift for a projector at a campus, and then the district now is actually moving forward with projectors everywhere. Well, obviously we want to have a common projector throughout the district for easier maintaining, similar bulbs, bulk order of things. So to remove that existing one from a campus because they're getting a new one or replacing it with a standard one for the district, that would be the, you know, it's not the intent of just taking things away if we want to. It's
we actually run into that quite a bit and have discussed this in cabinet prior to this. It creates quite a challenge because we end up trying to support more technology than we can actually support. So I agree, and I think what Dr. Lotchka is referring to is, I think the policy maybe stands on its own as a recommendation from TASB, but then we can create the regulation that doesn't go against the policy and can further specify to take care of those very concerns that you're worried about.
Yeah, the technology one, that's kind of an easy one. And again, wherever the criteria needs to be on what gifts to accept or not. Like I said, I just, the way this is currently worded, if this is all you saw and no more, this would be upsetting to people. So again, I don't know if there's a way to maybe pull this one aside, think about it a little bit more.
The regulation, what you just talked about, we get a way to address what you're saying.
Yeah, it's general governance language. It is a large umbrella with the understanding that you have operational procedures and regulations underneath that. And so that is, you know, if the desire of the board would be to pull it and consider it further, then, you know, we're more than happy to comply. These are board policies, but it would be a decision simply upon the majority of the board.
I guess if that's the case, I move that this will be pulled for further consideration on the wording and then brought back to us at a future date.
I have a short example. If a PTA has a fundraiser, if they donate that money but direct that it be spent for a specific purpose, is that allowed now? But if they don't direct it for a specific purpose, can then that money be designated by somebody else in the school as an administrator?
So typically, we're talking about things that are given, you know, if it's a money situation, it's going to be provided based on their PTA. PTA is limited to providing for that campus because it's an individual campus donation. What we're really referring to are more items, you know, physical, tangible items that are provided. If they end up using the money for a particular program that the district then turns around later and we now support and we provide them a like or better type of a piece of equipment, then that was where we want the opportunity to be able to pull the old and put the standardized up, so we're not having to duplicate our efforts of maintaining two pieces of equipment for the same purpose. But just looking at the PTA and how it's structured, it is a campus PTA, campus PTO, and the intent is, yes, the donation would stay there. It's just what we're trying to do is provide that opportunity that if we do replace it as a district, that we can pull the old out and not have to maintain two items. So whether it needs to be in regulation or if it needs to be in, you know, or we can put in regulation, we can, policies are y'all's, so we can also make modifications there.
No, I'm not trying to make it more difficult. I mean,
No.
If a PTA has a fundraiser, it stays on that campus.
A prime example would be this year. Velasco Elementary worked diligently over the past few years with their PTO to raise money for additional playground equipment. They purchased that equipment in collaboration with the district this year in our maintenance department, and maintenance department helped them to get that installed. So it is right there on their campus.
I second George's motion. And the driver behind doing that is when the tractor trailer was donated, the provider specifically said it was to go to, if I remember correctly, for the Brazosport band. And the district, and it came to the board, well, we appreciate the gift, but the board was going to decide where it went, and not the specific person, which that protected, I think, protected the district. As, even though it went to the Brazosport band, I think that's kind of where that example comes to mind when I read that. Like this, the gift shall become sole property of the district, and that whole paragraph. I think additional clarification would be appropriate, and if it's in regulation, okay with that. But like I said, it could be read different, all kinds of different ways.
Well, we can make a motion for all these policies and take that one out in a minute, right? And then maybe next month talk about this one.
Yeah, we would need to, yes, whenever the final motion is made, it would be to, on all the other policies, with also taking this one out. You could do one motion for both.
Cool, and that's CDC.
I mean, it's just a motion, made by George, seconded by me. If it fails, it fails. I'm okay with that.
I mean, you can also take action on that motion in second now, and then take action on all the policies that are depending on.
Is there a motion to pull CDC?
George made that motion and Ron seconded.
Seconded, so now any more discussion? All those in favor of pulling CDC, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by nay? I will pull CDC.
And we'll go on with our last policy. GD Local is another new policy we are recommending regarding our public information program. With HB5's new requirements related to measuring community engagement, we believe it's important to add this TASB version policy and ensure public relations remains a required focus for our district. This policy does not change our current practice, but does make public engagement efforts a policy requirement. Are there any questions on GD local?
Doesn't look like you have any questions.
Okay. Well,
Motion to accept these policy changes.
I'm good though. Oh.
Are you done?
I was gonna, no, I was gonna.
Make the recommendation, but we can go ahead, jump right on in.
Mr. Sullivan makes a motion to.
Private powers of promulgation, I approve the
There you go.
recommendation to approve these laws.
Is there a second? What did you say?
I'll second.
Second time to repeat. Is there a second?
I did.
I'm sorry, so I missed that. Any more discussion?
Just a clarification of what he said, but that's what I.
Okay. So all those in favor of accepting these policies, which exclude CDC, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by nay? So the motion carries. Yes. Is there, can we can't go to report and then come back to the next item? Okay.
Our next agenda item is state testing requirements for 8th grade math and Algebra 1.
I mean, I apologize for digressing. Rather than you go try to read George's mind and my mind, this is what we wanted for that. Should maybe just throw something at you as a strong man to think about.
He will contact and give some feedback.
Well, good evening once again. A little bit loud. Over the next few minutes, District Secondary Math and Social Studies Coordinator Michael Williams and I will provide you with information to guide you as you make your decision regarding 8th grade Algebra 1 students taking both the Algebra 1 EOC and the 8th grade Math STAR. As stated in Board Policy EKB Legal, every student receiving instruction in the essential knowledge and skills will take the appropriate criterion referenced assessments as required by Education Code Chapter 39, Subchapter B. Additionally, a student may not receive a high school diploma until the student has performed satisfactorily on the end-of-course assessment instruments. The law requires that all students in grades 3 through 8 shall be assessed on the appropriate math assessment for that grade level unless the student is enrolled in a course for high school credit in a subject intended for students above the student's enrolled grade level.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
Yes, sir, sure will. So the law requires that all students in grades 3 through 8 shall be assessed on the appropriate math assessment for that grade level unless the student is enrolled in a course for high school credit in a subject intended for students above the student's enrolled grade level, in this case, Algebra 1. Students enrolled in a course for high school credit must be administered an end-of-course assessment instrument that aligns with the curriculum for that course or subject within the same content area. So those students would have to take the Algebra 1 EOC. With the passage of House Bill 5 and the elimination of the Geometry and Algebra 2 EOC assessments, a discrepancy between the state rules described in the previous slide and federal law as described in Nickleby has emerged. Federal rules require that a child have a mathematics score every year in grades 3 through 8, as well as a mathematics score in high school. With the elimination of the Geometry and Algebra 2 EOC assessments, the only high school mathematics assessment that will count toward graduation is Algebra 1. According to the U.S. Department of Education, states who offer only one mathematics assessment at the high school level must ensure there is mathematics results that can be attributed to the high school. Therefore, the scores of intermediate school students taking the Algebra 1 EOC in 2014 will follow the students to high school and count only for the spring 2015 testing. They will not count towards 2014 accountability at either the intermediate school or the high school. As you can see, to administer only the Algebra 1 EOC to 8th grade students would mean that those students will not meet the federal requirement to have a mathematics score attributable to this testing year. Furthermore, each of our intermediate schools will fail to meet the federal 95% participation requirement and will miss AYP. BISD currently has 8th grade students who are earning high school credit by taking an Algebra 1 course. Those students must take the Algebra 1 end-of-course exam. It's required. Due to the 8th grade federal testing requirements described above, these students would also need to take the 8th grade STAR math exam in order to have a math assessment attributable to the intermediate schools this testing year. In a letter published August 2nd, 2013, the Commissioner of Education stated, based on this federal requirement and a related provision within House Bill 5, I am reluctantly advising districts to plan on administering multiple assessments to students taking Algebra 1 in middle school or understand the potential federal accountability consequences of testing these students only on Algebra 1. The Commissioner went on to encourage districts to continue to make the best instructional choices for students regardless of the potential accountability impact. So at this time, Michael Williams will come and address the potential impact of administering the 8th grade STAR math to BISD 8th grade students taking Algebra 1.
Approximately 250 students will be affected directly by this decision. When surveyed, the 8th grade Algebra 1 teachers expressed concern over double testing since there are concepts and skills on the 8th grade test that are not in the Algebra 1 curriculum. If the district decides that these students will take both tests, then our teachers will need to provide instruction on the gap TEKs that would not ordinarily be part of their curriculum. An analysis of where these gaps exist has already begun. Teachers would have from now until April 1st to review or instruct their students on the missing 8th grade material, in addition to continuing their Algebra 1 curriculum. Teachers might do this through daily warm-ups, an examination of specific questions, or a parenthetical review unit lasting 1 or 2 weeks. Since these students were in advanced 7th grade math, they should have learned some of the 8th grade material last year. If these students are to take both state assessments, they need to take both benchmarks as well. Once the 8th grade benchmark is completed, teachers will have data on specific questions and TEK standards in order to determine which concepts and skills need to be taught and how much time needs to be dedicated.
If the 8th grade Algebra 1 students take only the Algebra 1 EOC assessment, the projected participation rates for 8th grade math are: Clute Intermediate School, 70%. Freeport Intermediate School, 78%. Lake Jackson Intermediate School, 44%. All three schools would miss the 95% participation requirement for math in the state accountability system safeguards and would not make AYP. In addition, the top performing math student scores will not count toward their campus's STAR advanced performance, which could adversely impact their performance ratings in Index 1 and 2, and will certainly impact their ratings in Indexes 3 and 4, where the percentages of advanced performance level 3 and performance at final level 2 are the determining factors for meeting standards in those indexes. Consequently, all three campuses would be at risk of being rated improvement required for 2014. If 8th grade students only take the Algebra 1 EOC, then the guaranteed outcome for each intermediate school would be that they will miss one or more of the system safeguards for a second consecutive year and would be required to continue in the TASE process. The local school board has the authority to decide which assessment requirements 8th grade students must meet. According to the Commissioner of Education, administering both tests to affected students is the only feasible option for the 2013-2014 school year that would satisfy current federal accountability requirements and the legislative requirements of House Bill 5. It is the recommendation of administration that 8th grade students be administered both the 8th grade STAR Math and the Algebra 1 EOC exams for 2013-2014. The Commissioner letter regarding currently proposed, Commissioner rules affecting the Texas Assessment Program can be found on the TEA website. We would be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Looks like Michael Williams could take care of Michael Williams.
You think so?
He doesn't listen to you either.
I'll just add a comment that I'm on the curriculum committee, and we discussed this last week, and the whole makeup of the committee, the teachers, principals, parents, et cetera, this gave nobody heartburn in that meeting, and I support the decision to proceed. It's 250 kids out of the whole district, and these are some of our best and brightest kids, so the kind of the feeling at the end of it was like, okay, just suck it up and do it, and it's the right thing to do.
Is there any options or potential additional resources to use to kind of fill this gap, this 8th grade testing gap, for a couple weeks or whatever?
Yeah, we've getting feedback from our teachers so far. If I remember correctly, we have 6 Algebra 1 teachers at 8th grade, and all 6 of them also teach regular 8th grade. So on a daily basis, they bounce between Algebra 1 and 8th grade TEKS day after day. What I asked a week or so ago, and I've gotten some feedback, and once the decision is made, we'll move forward on that. But I heard from a couple of teachers, and I said, what do you not normally teach in your Algebra 1 class that you see? I asked them to look at the 8th grade TEKS, look at them one more time, what stands out as something that you don't normally teach. One of the teachers, or a couple of teachers, sent me a list of a handful, and there were eight standards. We'll see if there are more that come up from other teachers. But what I was able to do with those 8 standards is I created a table, one column with those 8 standards from 8th grade. I went back to the 7th grade standards to see if there was any overlap. Some standards do show up, at least in part, in 7th grade. And also looked at last year's release test, last year's STAR test, and noticed that out of those 8 standards the teachers listed, there were 4 that were readiness standards, 4 that were supporting, and each of the readiness standards, that standard was tested 3 times on the state test. The supporting standards were each tested once. We will be giving that state test as our benchmark in next a week or 2. And so we'll be able to have, our teachers would have that data in order to see that, okay, we have these 8 standards, but you know what, my students performed, they already know what's going on these 5, so we can concentrate on these 2 or 3.
going to call the meeting back to order at we're still in the report section. And our first report at this point will be the district plan for implementation of HB 5. Thank you.
Good evening. We will be presenting our BISD district plan for implementation of House Bill 5 in accordance with EIF local, legal, and our BISD strategic plan. 1.2, provide innovative instructional opportunities to address individual student needs. And then 1.22, create systems to ensure instructional strategies are relevant, engaging, and incorporate 21st century learning skills.
Good evening. On May 27, 2013, the Texas House of Representatives passed House Bill 5. House Bill 5 is best known for reducing the number of end-of-course exams for high school students from 15 to 5. However, there are several other significant changes it requires districts to implement. First of all, changing graduation requirements for students entering grade 9 in 2014 and 2015, and providing current seniors an opportunity to opt into the new foundation plan for graduation. And the second, creating local district indicators for accountability and transparency. This slide is a visual timeline with state actions across the top and BISD's work across the bottom. The bill gives the State Board of Education decision-making authority on a number of issues, and as you can see, the final State Board of Education proposal of the foundation graduation program is currently under for public comment. The State Board of Education is projected to make final decisions at their January 29th through 31st meetings this month. Thus far, in our implementation, we have held informational presentations to the Career and Technical Education and Curriculum Advisories, as well as published an article in the District's Insight magazine to the community, and held an initial meeting of our BISD House Bill 5 Task Force, which is made up of district and campus secondary administrators, counselors, and teachers.
To address the need for local district indicators of accountability, the House Bill 5 Task Force has been broken up into subcommittees. House Bill 5, oh, I'm sorry. House Bill 5, fell asleep on you. House Bill 5 subcommittees are currently meeting and will present their recommendations to the task force in February. Moreover, a joint advisory meeting will be held to gain input from parents and community and students later that month. Until the State Board of Education makes their final decision in late January, our BISD timeline shown here will remain tentative. Many of the day-to-day operations and curriculum instruction will be impacted by their decisions. The board will receive regular updates on the progress and implementation of House Bill 5 for the remainder of this school year. Sorry. As we wait to hear the final decisions from the State Board of Education, a few decision points for the board to be thinking about are listed here. Will BISD students under the new foundation graduation plan be required to have speech? Under the current BISD minimum recommended graduation plan, they must have half a credit of speech. House Bill 5 allows flexibility in the course sequence for high school social studies and science. When making these decisions, it is important to consider which grade level courses will require an end of course exam. Should BISD combine world geography and world history classes as allowed by House Bill 5? Should our course sequence allow for a gap in social studies? Our district staff is working to gather teacher and administrative input to help formulate recommendations for these issues. As of December, our social studies coordinator has surveyed current high school teachers and met with both principals to discuss options and gather input. The decisions for course sequence for the new foundation graduation plan will rely on the State Board of Education's decision at the end of January.
In addition, our current career and technical education pathways are being reviewed to identify areas to be strengthened and or added within our career clusters. As you can see from this slide, we are lacking 2 of those clusters: marketing, sales and services, and education and training, which are shown here in green. The arts and humanities endorsement that's listed at the top has only 1 career cluster attached to it. A 5-year plan is being developed to address the need House Bill 5 created to enhance the endorsement opportunities for all BISD students. This includes adding those missing pathways and strengthening current pathways to increase opportunities. Section 46 of House Bill 5 states school districts must evaluate their performance and the performance of each campus in compliance and also community and student engagement. The district must assign itself and each campus a rating of either exemplary, recognized, acceptable, or unacceptable. Districts will need to establish local criteria that will be used to issue a rating to the district and each campus that include these 9 indicators that are shown here. The district must use criteria developed by a local committee in completing this evaluation. The district must report each performance rating to the Texas Education Agency and make each rating available to the public by August 8th of 2014. The subscription to K-12 Insight that the board recently approved will provide a dashboard for BISD who will use it to share this accountability information to the public. In addition, K-12 Insight survey data will be essential in developing the accountability system to rate our campuses and district on these 9 indicators. The implementation of House Bill 5 and BISD began in September of 2013 and will continue through August of 2014.
We're happy to answer any questions that you may have about House Bill 5 implementation at this time.
I apologize. If you go back, there's a slide there. Keep going. Keep going back. Second bullet. The local school board will determine course sequence for high school social studies and science. We're gonna see a recommendation from someone. I won't determine that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we are gathering input and yes, we definitely will give feedback from our teachers, our administrators, and our district staff.
I just want to be absolutely. I trust somebody else to bring me around.
Yes, sir.
So when was House Bill 5 passed?
May 2013.
And we could get state board's recommendations in late January?
Taking a deep breath, yes. It's
January
like
29th of this month.
Or anybody set up courses for next school year? Or whatever.
typically,
We need a lot of help.
typically course selections or guides are given to campuses. January 7th is what our BISD usually hands that out. So I'm taking lots of deep breaths because that won't be able to happen until we have these decisions finalized. So it probably be.
And it's not happening for any other districts.
Right, it's across the
We're
state.
all in the same boat.
Okay, can we go to the endorsements? So I think that's the biggest change in the system. And again, it goes back to the course guides that are gonna go to the students and the parents have to sign off on the plan. So this is new for us. It's new, it's gonna be new for the community. Now, I know we're waiting on the state to give us the final information, but do we, or have we already started figuring out, can we write, 25, 50% of that course catalog? Do we have an implementation plan on how we're gonna all roll this out? I mean, everything that we can do as if we had the answer, knowing we've got black holes where we're missing the answers, and all that's being implemented.
Absolutely. You just articulated what we're doing.
I have a question on the same time. Seems like I remember when we were certified Fort Worth, in implementing curriculum, they suggested, or I think they did, if I'm wrong, I apologize, because I don't hear participation by students in any of this.
I think that's what's going to be changing. House Bill 5 wants student and parent to participate in this. And by looking at our long-range plan, we want to start in the 7th grade with those career explorations, determining what pathway that child needs to go on, and encouraging both the students and the parents to make the decision. That's the biggest deal about House Bill 5. It's more the student makes the decision and they're creating what is going to be their outcome for once they leave our schools.
And I'll add to what Denise is saying, and really she can speak to it too. I believe in December, you see that very last bullet, it says career cruising 8th graders. That is an assessment online that we gave this December to get that kind of input on students
you may want to talk about it.
Well, right, and that's just one piece in it. Again, next year, one of the things that we are looking in that 5-year plan is making sure that we start this process in the 7th grade, and then we start aligning it from there. We're having to work heavily with our counselors, because we know that the bulk of the work is going to have to rely on them, so they're going to have to be knowledgeable about the process and how that is all rolled out. I know that Dr. McCoy Jackson has been working with them all year long and trying to get them ready for this. And Mr. Anderson? Yes.
Judge?
Yeah, I have a couple.
A couple questions, there we go. Right there on your slide, the BISD task force, it's made up of administrators, counselors, okay.
Teachers, it's about 60 and all.
And then from there, subcommittees, and the subcommittees are for the endorsement.
So when you go
area?
back to the scorecards, this is the piece that we have to have ready.
Okay.
And so they will, we've broken that out, kind of categorized it out, and they'll be meeting. My meeting is actually tomorrow afternoon, and I'll be meeting with specific people that kind of deal with the scorecards that I'm involved with.
So we have nothing.
Right.
Back to the endorsements. Let me make sure I understand. The red indicates the endorsements that we now offer.
Those are the current clusters that we currently offer.
Okay, not endorsements, but the clusters.
Mhm.
And is education and training?
It is not a cluster that is offered in our district. Can you do that?
No, that's why I was asking. Okay, so we have a great opportunity there.
Yes, we
Okay. Now, from back to the half credit speech, that's what now BISD now requires, to have the credit speech, even though currently. And so we need to determine if that's,
And right now, the state board, that's part of what we hope they give us clarification, but it's my understanding it's a local decision. You know, right now.
I mean, but the state is zero at this point. Which is good. There was something, I guess, maybe on the timeline that it's a BISD Career Pathways 5-year plan.
Yes, that's correct. Uh-huh.
Can you briefly tell me what that means?
Well, when I'm looking at career and technical education and how we can strengthen those pathways, the best way that I know how to do that is to create this plan that slowly adds back into things like the teaching and education field, slowly strengthens what we have. Because right now what we have is kind of not in a straight alignment. So, and I think a lot of that had to do with our 4x4 requirements before. So some of the things were pushed down into the 8th grade, and I'm really wanting to move that so that the students get those in 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grade. So that's the first thing that we need to do, shore that up. And then from then, maybe each year add something new so that we can get back into alignment, get back those clusters of teaching, add more things like that will be more relevant to students, automotive maybe. We do have some of that going on, but maybe strengthen that a little bit better. Some of those programs that years ago, people still remember having those in our district, but it's been pushed aside because 4x4 was more important.
And so you have a tentative 5-year plan at this point, or is this time frame a little bit off? Or?
Right now, it's going to be starting for the 2014-2015 year, and I have a document out there. I've been collaborating with the different high schools and the CTE staff, and trying to get their input and input from the assistant principals and the principals as to what we really want that to look like.
And so, I'm sorry, Jim.
No, I'm done. Thanks.
If I understand this, under industry would be vocational trades.
Mm-hmm.
One of the clusters?
That's one of the clusters, yes, sir.
Am I correct?
Vocational, you're under industry?
Yeah, business is industry, so vocational trade would fall under there?
Oh, you're thinking of like the old vocational education type thing? The CTE replaces our vocational education as we used to know it. CTE is now known as career and technical education.
Where would it fall there?
Well, what specific course are you
Well,
referring to?
like auto mechanics, welding, so forth, so on.
But it actually can fall into two different areas, either transportation or STEM or business and industry, where it says transportation and distribution and logistics.
Do we have one in one of those clusters? Do we have that?
We do, we have it, but most of it does get, I guess, farmed out to Brazosport College. So they have, some of the things that they're missing in that piece is principles of transportation, which is something we need to work on getting back into the schools.
By farming out.
Farming out.
Are we paying for those students to go out there?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
It's dual credit classes.
So the district is paying college for the kid.
No.
Parent pays the college.
Parent pays the college.
So you're buying the college credit, no matter when you get high school credit.
I will tell you, we are having quite a few conversations with the college right now because we believe with House Bill 5, there's a lot more opportunities for partnership there. And so we have had a number of meetings with all the county superintendents in the college, and we are continuing to have local district meetings with the college as well because we want to take advantage of all the opportunities that they have and utilize those to benefit our programs.
Is there financial aid for students to get into those college classes?
I personally would like to see us keep the speech. Just my thing.
My kids are mad at me because I told them they will be taking it.
I think that would be a discussion for another meeting.
Yeah.
This is cool because we had students who graduated with a 4x4 who never did vocational classes and ended up going that direction, but they get to do that until they graduated. So this would be a positive for our students. Any more questions? Are you guys ready to move on? Thank you very much. Appreciate it very, very much. Appreciate that.
Staff being proactive.
Yes. Our next topic report is student remediation and retention.
Good morning. In accordance with board policy, EIE local and strategy 1.2 of the strategic plan, which states we will provide innovative educational opportunities to address individual student needs. I am happy to provide the board with a report about student remediation and retention. Let's begin with some definitions of remediation and retention. Remediation is defined as an effort to correct or improve deficient academic skills. Federal and state requirements outline expectations so that all students are afforded every opportunity to meet achievement expectations. Students not meeting district, state, identified minimum levels of performance would receive intensive instructional support in order to accelerate the student's rate of progress towards standards. The area of academic need and intervention strategies are identified through a problem-solving response to instruction and intervention process. The premise of retention is that when a student has not met the performance level required for promotion, the student would be held back to stay in the grade they just finished the previous year. The student would repeat the same materials they just covered the year before. Other names for retention are flunking, failing, or repeating a grade. Researchers also refer to retention as non-promotion or being held back. BISD's board policy states that the district shall establish procedures designed to reduce retaining students at a grade level with the ultimate goal of being the elimination of the need for retaining students. In BISD, the required procedures were not developed in accordance with this regulation until 2 years ago. The Curriculum Regulation Development Team created a regulation to provide procedures, required documentation, and outline the timeline to be followed for reporting when retention is being considered. The retention process requires campuses to develop an individualized intervention plan and document remediation efforts and progress prior to the consideration of retention. Monitoring the plan is the responsibility of each principal during each grading period. The regulation also gives directions for students that have an IEP, individual education plan, or an ELL student, English language learner, since there are specific federal requirements associated with students being served through federal programs. If a student is retained or placed, the principal must submit a transitional plan. The plan should include the targeted Tier 3 interventions that will be implemented for the upcoming year to ensure an ongoing support and intervention. The regulation also gives the process for appealing a retention decision. Just a bit of history. A retention reduction grant program was enacted in 1992-1993. A $5 million appropriation allowed 54 Texas school districts to pilot extended instructional programs to eliminate retention in first grade. The retention reduction grant allowed school districts and campuses to offer programs based on lengthening the school year as an alternative to retention. These programs provide additional instructions to students who need extra assistance to master what was called the essential elements. In 1995-1996, the commissioner will pay 5% of our foundation school program, compensatory education allotment, to finance extended year programs. This increased allocation for the extended year program for students in grade K-8 who were identified as not likely to be promoted, and about $50 million a year was added. We are now no longer required to apply for approval for OEYPs or optional extended year programs. They must be funded locally. BISD's retention rate has been above the state's rate for several years. By following our board policy and establishing procedures, the rate of retention is more in line with the rest of the state. Texas educational policy has held consistently that student promotion decisions be based on academic achievement. Over the past 2 decades, the policies surrounding student promotion decisions have evolved. Initially, Texas state laws and State Board of Educational rules pertaining to retention and promotion were designated to establish consistent promotion policies at the local level. Retention is a widely discussed topic that educators and administrators need to understand. Before schools can fully determine the option of retention, they should develop an informed view of retention. Although it is easy to say retention should be done away with, one must also acknowledge that retention may be necessary at times. As a teacher, academic achievement is the main reason to retain a child. The child does not perform well on a standardized test or in the classroom. Retention should only be a step after scientifically based interventions have taken place and have proven to be unsuccessful. Although retention may be necessary at times, it should not be the first consideration. It's clearly not a silver bullet that will effectively address the specific needs of all low achieving students. This slide provides a list of remediation interventions which would require additional resources of time, space, and personnel, but are essential to address the various needs of students who struggle and are likely to be impacted by retention. Early identification through assessment, remediation, intervention is essential. Whenever a student is struggling, until such assistance is provided, students will not receive the help needed to be successful. Without funding reductions at both state and with funding reductions at both state and federal levels, our remediation program at the campus level have been impacted. We know that early intervention and remediation is critical. Therefore, we have worked this year to adjust how our federal dollars and state compensatory education funds were utilized to increase remediation support. This concludes my presentation regarding remediation and retention, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Questions?
So our policy, if I'm reading this correctly, is that it's our goal to do away with remediation altogether. I'm sorry.
Retention.
Retention.
That's what they like, and they started on, and federally, the government started that by funding with these grants, and then it went away. And then we had to fund it locally, and then in the last couple of years, our budget has been so tight that we have not been able to provide that extended year program only for a limited amount of time. And 10 days is not enough.
Extended year is also known as summer school.
Oh,
Yeah.
We use different terms.
Oh, okay, because that I understand. Because that doesn't actually seem like a realistic, I mean, it's a great goal, but it doesn't seem like a realistic goal. I mean, there's always going to be kids who, for a multitude of reasons, they're going to fall through the crack, the home life.
That's why it's
queue,
important.
all this other stuff.
That's why it's important to start that process early. When there's an issue, you start it early.
Sure.
And it's not just a situation that may require a remediation program. It may be a social worker. It may be someone that has had some issues that they can't deal with, and so they can't cope with curriculum issues at this point. And so it would require a lot of conversations and working with that particular child until they move forward. But if you don't have those supports and built in the school, then you can't provide that. If you don't have those programs available for a tutorial program, if you don't have a mentors program, if you don't have all those things that students may need to step away, because guess what? We all learn at different times and spaces. And it may take me, let's say, it may take me like 3 days to learn a subject or some type of problem that is being explained in class. But it might take, let's say, Dolores 5 or 10 days. Well, guess what? And it's not going to really take 10 days. It'll take more for me to learn, so it probably me with the 10 days. But the bottom line is that the most important thing is that when I learn it, I have it. Because it shouldn't be that I take a 0 and I move on, because that doesn't help me, because I have a foundation built on seeing, because I can't go forward. So if I don't learn the material, I'm not going to move forward, and I'm not going to do well on any type of state assessment. So we can't just give them a 0 and then forget about it. It has to be worked on consistently early.
That's the role of interventionists.
Mm-hmm. And teachers, tier 1 in the classroom, yes.
Also, it's critical to know whether a child who begins, say, kindergarten, understand what kind of educational system has been implemented, is being reared. Scientifically, a child, embryo at 6 months is ready to learn. The Oriental culture begins to teach them math and reading and so forth and so on. So I I wholeheartedly approve of the policy of intervention before retention, but, so that tells me that we have to make a very sincere effort to find out how these children, you know, learn at home. And then we get to the problem of that some of these are just simply not going to learn, and so we have to try to steer them into a vocational program, or at least a productive citizens. Am I correct or am I wrong?
Well, it depends on time. We have quite a few gifted students, but you're right. They may not have what other students have at home. They may have limited amount of books. They may have the gift, not having the gift of time, as far as they don't have parents that are working with them because the parents are working. And if they are developed at school, if we can give them everything that they need, then they'll do fine. But it's the gift of time, and the time and time costs money. And that's the way we have to look at it. And you know, the bottom line is that we're going to have to determine as a community where we want to put our funds in. If we want to put them in early, with early intervention, to start putting those programs, putting those systems in place to support students early, and then they have a better chance of graduation. They have a better chance of coming back into our community and feeding into our community and being a part. We're in the process of looking at putting together focus groups so we can talk to the students about, okay, what are you getting in the classroom? What can we do better? How can we support you better? So when you go off to college, then you're going to finish college. You're not going to be a statistic like what we've seen in some of our slideshow presentations, because you make it there, but the whole point is you got to stick. You got to stay there.
Well, I
think it's really important to note a couple of things. When we talk about remediation, I think we need to remember that remediation is very difficult because it is an ongoing, constant process. And so it is important that remediation is taking place all the time. You never allow a student to, like she said, just get a 0. You're always going back and saying why. You're asking why and trying to work to ensure that they have the concepts and skills that they need in order to move on, because everything in K-12 education builds upon itself. And so you've got to have maintain every skill, and every skill is important. In addition to that, I want to really note that we are not advocating that if a student can't get it done that they go into a vocational track. We believe that every one of our children are gifted, and that there are going to be gifted kids in all kinds of programs throughout our district. I think that we have to find, it's our responsibility to find that giftedness, unlock it, and use it to help them to be successful academically and in all other ways. And so we are continuing to work on all those factors, and understanding that remediation programs do cost money. They do require additional time and effort and energy on everyone's part. We have had to reduce our summer school program over the past few years due to the budget cuts. We're hoping to not have to do that this year and be able to really put that back as a way to create a quality remediation program in the summer. We've implemented a lot more remediation opportunities at the campuses to help support and fill the gaps where students have those. And we're looking at our, I think, like she noted, those early interventions, early childhood programs, talking about our pre-K and what we need to do to get them started and on track early. So, but we do need to remember that every time our economically disadvantaged and our at-risk population continues to grow, those challenges increase, because they don't necessarily always, not every situation, but not always come from an academic home. And so those challenges, we've got to be ready for them and ready to help support them through remediation programs.
I think based on this report and everything that you said makes sense. But I guess comment or feedback that I'm getting from the community, and we may need to do some marketing or changing of perceptions is there's a perception of social passing, which is, based on your report, it's unacceptable, and I think everybody will agree to that. I've heard some comments from teachers, or I guess second-hand, third-hand, that teachers feel that they're not allowed to retain, that they pretty much have to do whatever it is.
They have a process.
Right. And so I think there may be a little bit of a perception issue, and an communications improvement opportunity, based on what you've presented, maybe a better opportunity to define and describe and communicate the remediation process. Because I hear a lot of comments that are kind of counter to what you just presented, and so.
And Mr. Sullivan, just to let you know that when we first started this rig, when we introduced it, I did go to quite a few schools and brought teachers in, and we talked about this. The problem is that no one likes to hear no, and or show me your data, or did you follow the process. Now it takes time to build that in, and we've started it, and for the past 2 years we've done this, and it's gotten better each year. I've had some wonderful conversations with some of our parents that have, after speaking to them, you know, the data might have not said that there is an issue with retention, you know, there's not an educational need, but after talking to the parents and hearing what some of the students have gone through, and it may not be an educational need, it's a need about time because of things that have happened in this child's development, that they need to stay back for certain reasons. And once parents share that with me, then of course, you know, we're going to do everything we can to support, because if a parent is against the process, then it's not going to help us anyway. But I think that also makes them feel better when they have an opportunity to talk to someone and share, and someone actually listens, takes notes, and then you start working on the process of how are you going to make this a different experience than it was the year before. Because if it was not successful the year before, then we need to do something about that. Or if it took me all year to finally go, oh, I got it. And I need more time to build that in. And if the teacher knows exactly where I stopped, where I need to be, then I'm not going to have the same experience, because I have a transitional plan, and I am going to be tier 3. You know, you're going to be watching me and really making sure that I am making those strides. And if that is happening, you have a better chance of success to move on and put this behind you and really enjoy learning. Because it is no one wants to sit in the classroom and not understand what's going on. It's not fun.
The
administrative regulation, I guess, EIE, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there about the documentation, et cetera, and I did find it, it's right there, number 7. You know, of what is needed and what it's gonna take in the documentation, and basically this indicates that, talks about the end of February having maybe those who notified, but obviously that's done, you know, previously to this, but this is just kind of I assume this is kind of like the timeline to start.
Yes,
I mean,
to start letting me know.
Yeah, hopefully effort's been done to try to, you know, be able to move forward with those students, but I guess by end of February, that's when
you start letting me know and start seeing that we're seeing some concerns, and I want to let you know about those concerns, and we start having the initial meetings with principals.
Yeah, I'm still having difficulty understanding them, so when you talk. But anyway, back on your graph, obviously the state is reducing the number of retention also.
Oh, yes.
Because it's going down, but if you take first grade, for instance, the statistics that I looked up starting in 2004-05 is it was 7.3, 6.8, 6.9, 7.0, 5.9, 5.1, 4.2, 4.1, and 2.0. So, you know, for first grade, I just picked that out. Now this is the total, I guess. you know,
Yeah.
EISD is going down, but also state appears to be going down some also, so, you know, we're kind of like right at the edge right now from that graph, so, you know, I guess I've had more different input on retention with understanding, misunderstanding, and et cetera, so I think it's an area that, you know, we certainly need to work on, like George says, as far as making sure we understand, you know, because I'm learning a lot more now about it, so be able to answer those questions that have come forward, so I think this is good, I think it's good, I think it's good info, so thanks.
Could you like maybe keep going back, please? There. So in 92, 93, we were given some money to help with a developer retention.
Well, if you applied for the grant, and there were 54 districts that applied during that time, and they dispersed the funding out to extend that extended year program or summer school.
So in 95, 96, they increased the amount.
Yes.
And then now there's no funding, so the districts put it themselves.
Yes.
We feel like with the reduction of the OEYP, I remember when we did that. Our district, and I applaud our district for saying, we're not gonna, even though we're not funded, it's valuable, that the thought is very critical to our students to continue elimination of retention, remediation, go ahead and say this, remediation. So I applaud you and your staff in that district.
And there's
spending, I guess I'm assuming, a lot of money, putting forth a lot of dollars to ensuring our success of our students, which goes a long way.
But we need more, you know, because I'm sorry, I'm greedy. That's what Dan tells me all the time. But the bottom line is that we're only covering high school, and then we brought in 5th and 8th grade this past year. We're not doing elementary. We're not bringing in elementary at all. And all of the research says that you really should start early. But, you know, when you got a credit game and you have to graduate, you're trying to graduate, then that's on fire. So you deal with that. But I know that we need to be bringing elementary in also, because that's creating an issue.
Well, our principals told us that the only time you should retain is first grade if they can't read. I mean, it makes sense to move on if you can read, so I agree with that. Can I ask a question? This is a concern I hear a lot too. And teachers say if they retain someone, that they get that student back next year.
Yes.
And the reason for that, I'm guessing is they know that student better?
Yes, they know that student now. If a principal talks to me and they say, if we have a conversation and they say, this is not going to be a good fit for that next year, then of course, I'm going to take the advice of what the principal is recommending. But in most cases, you know, it's good practice to have that child in that same classroom, because the teacher knows exactly what they need, what they don't need, how they can enrich, move the student forward, so they can't have the same experience. And if you don't know me and you know nothing about me, yes, you'll get it on paper, but guess what? I might not know that you know how to do fractions. I might forget because I get so busy in planning my lessons or whatever, and then I give you a whole lesson on that, and you could have been doing something else, working on something that would have been more valuable, because I did that whole thing last year, and I know it, I've got it. So I don't want to do that anymore. I need to be moving on to something else I don't know. And the best person to do that is the teacher. And if you feel strongly about retaining a student, you have responsibilities to that student. It's not just see you later, somebody else's turn. You have responsibility. That student has missed a year. That student is a year behind on your recommendation. That's strong. That's a whole year. The older I get, I keep thinking about that year. That's a lot to a year. And you think about that with your students, and we want that time to be faster. We need to throw the best. Now, if that teacher is not the best fit, then of course we'll take the recommendation, but the principals will make those recommendations to me, and that's part of our conversation.
Would it be better to put our money into elementary summer school or more interventionists during the school year?
Both.
Yeah, and she's right. It's best would be both ongoing intervention and remediation, because anytime students have downtime out of school time, then of course there is potential for regression, and so we need to fill in those gap times as well as having that ongoing intervention on a regular school day. I think one of the things that has caused some of the concern as well as the questions and confusion is having a new retention process, just having new processes that you're expected to follow creates some discontent when you have to go through a procedure. But some of this is also a part, is really aligned with what is required federally under response to intervention. Response to intervention came into play about 10 years ago, at least, and where there were requirements federally that you had to identify the intervention for a student and then track how a student was responding to that intervention. And really, a full implementation of an RTI program was not in place. And so that's been added as a piece of that. So had there been a full understanding of RTI, then this would not have been that big of a shift, because it's just in alignment with RTI. But because there wasn't the background in that, that has created some challenges as well. I think it's also the shift from going to teaching to the masses, and if you get it, you get it. If you don't, then you stay back. And creating an individualized and personalized instruction for every student. And that's really the way education has shifted, is really focusing on the individual needs of each and every child. And that's a very different concept. So.
It totally is, and you have to really think about, it's not like when we went to school. We have kids that have all types of issues, and if you're requiring a child to have to sit down, and if you have students that cannot sit down because of issues as far as medical issues, that type of thing, then we can't require that. I mean, we have kids that, yes, we have kids that really they can't do it, and so if they're getting dinged and sit out of the room and they're missing half of the curriculum, and then they come back and they've missed, then they're not gonna do well, because they have gaps just in hearing, which they're supposed to be doing. So we're working on putting those processes in place, and talking to principals and hearing that information when we go to our CDATs and DDATs, and it's been eye-opening. But we have to shift how we see school.
I guess thinking out loud, when we do the demographic study as part of the bond initiative, I don't know if there's a way to analyze that data from exactly this kind of a remediation perspective to determine if we need to get ahead of the curve as far as maybe hiring additional counselors, additional interventionists. I mean, we may, if we are seeing a true shift in certain demographics, we may need to change our staffing approach to get ahead of that shift versus trying to play catch up when that shift actually hits. And I don't know if that's something that the demographer can add to that report. Maybe something new, or if there's a way to.
In my experience with demographers, they don't really sort it that way, but
I think the shift has already hit.
Yeah, I think we're already.
Shifting is killing us.
Yeah, I think it's already here.
Just a thought to maybe add that to the process.
Mr. Howard?
I have a real quick question. I mean, I know we had summer school when I was a kid, so who was paying for it before '92? Was it the local school district? Probably went to state, probably went to federal.
Yes. Some of it came from federal, some of it came from state, and local. And plus, as far as summer school was concerned, it's not the same. The makeup was not totally the same. And so it's a little bit different.
the numbers of kids have increased that needed the support. Whereas if you were in a track, you were tracked. And so there were certain kids that went to summer school. You know, I remember the way we had it set up, there was like an enrichment strand of if you were like going to college, and then you would be doing the classes that would move you up so you wouldn't have to take classes throughout the school year. And then they had another little track where you go cook during the summer and learn how to sew and that type of thing. So it was not the same type of educational environment as we have now.
Well, I want to know this. In what grade do we begin to give our young students grades?
Well, we start in first. Well, we started giving grades or giving little checks throughout. They start having little evaluations throughout. That's how you determine whether they're learning. But if you're talking about true
numerical
grades, then grades.
When do we start?
First, it's
Like,
first grade,
you make
but
a 100,
you,
like a
but
90, or you got a superior or excellent.
yeah, that kind of stuff. You get, but that to me is grades. That's telling how your progress is. So.
That's what I want to know, ethnicity. I want it broken down by blacks, whites, Hispanics. Because if we know at a very young age that a subgroup is not doing very well, then we need to address that problem.
I agree.
Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I want to know.
Well, I'm going to have to get back with you on that because I don't have that as part of my presentation. But I will be happy to get back with you on that. Mr. Red?
If you look
at
if you review the retention or the policies, and you also review the administrative reg, I think there's a lack of desire of understanding and comprehension. And I think that's contributes a portion to our ongoing concerns being expressed to us on retention. I think it's very, very explicit on what needs to be done and how and what the process is. So there's a lot of details, and I think some of it is a lack of understanding or maybe a lack of wanting to understand it. So I think that's just another area to work on. So.
But if we have summer school and more interventionists, it would help us, right? It'd help those people who are, so if we could find that money to do that, that'd be great.
I was watching Dolores Babs expressions while we were talking and making the presentation. I kind of got the feeling there, and I remembered catalog development. I think it's one of these catalog, device catalog. Is that some overlap that y'all, I mean, I think it's overlap with what you're doing and what they're developing is.
Oh, yeah. Are we talking about the course selection guide?
Yeah.
We're talking about the overlap for this? No.
No, I'm talking about overlap, like when people talk, when parents and students get together with someone and develop the courses that they're going to take.
Of the graduation plan.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this information, where there may be some gaps, that's what I'm calling overlap.
Having those conversations during
That those conversations may take place if required during the development of their.
Well, we're required for that to take place, and we've started working with our counselors because the experience that we have is going to change with how we work with our parents with selecting courses. In the past, the way it was done, it was more so that the students brought home something pretty quickly, had a sheet, a selection sheet, and then they, that's what you had. Well, you have a course selection guide. You will keep that course selection guide. It's online, or if you need a copy, it will be in English, it will be in Spanish. I wish it could be in other languages, but that's all I got right now. And at this point, what we do is you would have an opportunity, the students would really go into a computer lab with a team of counselors working with those students to choose courses. What will work, what pathway are you interested in? And then at that point, parents will then be brought in to really formalize and hear different types of discussion. We're trying to look at trying to have some of the pathway teachers coming in and doing some presentations, having the students, their students, and bringing their products in so students can know what are they taking. You know, fine arts, having them come in and see, well, how are you going to learn how to play? You know, those types of things, so they'll have a clear understanding of what those courses are. And then at that point, having the parents to sign off on what they're choosing. So it's more of a collaborative process, not a process that's rushed through as a task. It's something that you enjoy and you're excited about, because this is telling, you're seeing your future. This is what I'm going to become. And that's what it should be about.
Cool. I appreciate y'all offering definitely good articulated responses to my poorly asked questions.
No.
So I appreciate it.
You guys ready to move on? I think Randy turned our hair off. Save some energy. Right.
Is it
Got
morning?
it?
Okay.
Thank you very much. Continue, you guys, or you want to save some of this for next board meeting, or?
Can we?
I'm afraid if we don't finish pretty soon, they won't be able to come back. They'll still be here tomorrow morning, so.
We don't have any action items, so the only thing that is required to be reported at this time is the finalized of the board trustee training hours, which you can make this presentation, but outside of that, the other ones could be moved.
You guys good with that?
And the budget development.
And I'll just say to continue education the same as it was. So, we talked about it, so we're good. And, how
So
about?
I'm gonna, so she gets it for the minutes, we're gonna move, reports C, E, and F to next month. And,
We did G.
and G has been done, it's not been changed since, January. And then committee reports, is a standard item, are there any?
Are you guys good with committee reports?
Yes.
Cool. So is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I vote.
So we have a second and a motion. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you very much for being here so late with us tonight. Appreciate your presentations for sure.
Don't forget your gifts.
Oh, thank you.
Back.
We'll forgive.